Welcome to the cinematic odyssey that is midlife running. I'm your host, Midlife Runner. This is a pre-race video for the Buffalo Marathon. In this video, we are going to be covering the training plan from McMillan. I'm going to review the mileage, some of the workouts, what I thought of it, how much fitter did I get, and for accountability purposes, we're going to talk about the forecast and the race day strategy. Fascinating. As this video airs, I am on a plane on my way to Buffalo, New York. Okay, for the mileage building into this sub-3 attempt, I ran on average about 65 to 66 miles for 9 straight weeks, with peak mileage coming at 75 and 80 miles. But did you die? On the inside, a little bit, and a little bit on the outside too. Okay, now let's talk about some of the workouts. Don't worry, I'm not gonna bore you with my splits. I really just wanna talk about a couple of types of workouts that were in the McMillan training plan that I hadn't really done before in other plans. One of them, namely the super duper long run. Now, McMillan does not call it the super duper long run. That would be a terrible name. So for the idea of these runs, it's that you're gonna be out on your long run for longer than you intend to run the marathon. So for me, going for a sub-3 attempt, I'm supposed to run a 3-hour long run, and then 2 weeks later I run a 3-hour 15-minute long run, and then 2 weeks after that, in my peak week, I run a 3-hour and 30-minute long run, which carries me to a distance of 27 miles, which is, little known fact, farther than the marathon itself. It is super duper long. So the other unique workout that was part of this plan is actually not very unique. It's a pretty standard workout for a lot of training plans out there. It is the 20 to 30 minute tempo run. So normally instead what I would do is tempo intervals. So I would oftentimes do mile repeats with a minute break. Let me tell you, that minute break is the shortest minute that I can think of, but I miss it dearly. What would I rate the McMillan training plan? I'm gonna say solely based on the work to rest ratio, I'm gonna give it 10 out of 10. I mean, not only did I not get injured during this plan, I also didn't really feel any niggles at any point. So any plan you don't get injured, you just give it a 10? I don't know if it's just my body adapting to fitness over time and I could handle the volume now, or if it was as prescribed. But to give you some context here, during my peak week, the day before my peak week, I had a 20-mile long run with 8 miles at marathon pace to finish that long run. Then, some easy miles on Monday. Tuesday, a midweek long run of 13 miles. That's a half marathon. Wednesday, some easy miles. Thursday, 10 miles marathon pace with some miles before and after to warm up and cool down. Another half marathon. Friday and Saturday, some easy miles. And then Sunday, the super duper long run of 27 miles, totaling 80 for that week. Factoring in the 20 from the Sunday before, that's 100 miles. 100 miles in 8 days, and I didn't get hurt. You didn't rest on the Sabbath? This is the kind of ambitious running I want to prescribe myself. I just don't have the balls to do it. And I'm not a certified coach, right? So I'm definitely not gonna write myself 100 miles in 8 days. But it worked. Now, how much fitter did I get? This is one of those questions. It really doesn't matter. We're gonna find out when I run the Buffalo Marathon. It's the ultimate test. I think you can look at like recent race performances, or you can look at those race predictors online. I have not run any recent race performances, so I have nothing to offer of substance in that category. And for the race predictors, I made a whole video about that. I'll put it up here, over there. But basically going into the Woodlands Marathon in March, my Metathon CR Plots race predictor time was around 3:09:30. I believe when I finished my 9 weeks and I started my taper, it was somewhere around 3:01:17. So I gained about an imaginary 8 minutes of marathon fitness in the span of those 9 weeks. And to note with those marathon predictors, I tend to finish 4 or 5 minutes in front of their predicted time. So finishing 4 minutes in front of 3:01:17, if I'm feeling optimistic, would put me sub-3. Okay, for the weather on race day in Buffalo, I've been checking that 10-day forecast every day, and it has changed every day substantially. Future's bright, you know what I'm saying? There's no point in even looking at it. It started like it was gonna be a really hot day, and then it was suddenly the next day going to be really cold, and I got excited. And then it was going to be raining, and that still also excited me. But then the next day it was going to be hot again, and then now it's going to be mild, but it might be overcast. So it basically says this: 55 degrees as a low in the morning, 75 for the high, which means somewhere in the 60s. Now, somewhere in the 60s for me is pretty scary because I run in San Antonio, and down here it's very humid and it's hot and the dew point is very high. So I can't imagine running in the 60s and being able to breathe, or running in the 60s and not being drenched in sweat by mile 3 or mile 4. Ultimately, guys, it doesn't really matter what it's gonna be. I've learned, if I pay attention to the weather and how it affects my paces, it could be a real hit on the confidence. And ultimately, I'm just gonna go out for a sub 3 anyway, and it doesn't matter what kind of information I can extract online from heat and humidity calculators or whatever I can find. It doesn't matter. Race day will be a mystery. Race day strategy. Run your goal pace, hit your goal. Okay, this is for accountability. I'm gonna do a slight negative split. First 5K, maybe 657 per mile. Then I'm gonna hone in 652, 653 to about the halfway point. I wanna be somewhere between 130 to 130.30, and then I'm gonna start flipping it on the other side, somewhere between 648 and 652 for a good chunk to about maybe 18, and then I'm gonna go into threshold and I'm gonna fast finish, see what I got, and hopefully finish somewhere between 258.30 and 259. That's the strategy. Now, the reason I want to do this small differential and what I just laid out is because during the Woodlands half marathon, I started with a similar strategy, but with bigger margins. So I was landing 5 seconds behind 652 every mile for the first half. My average pace was like a 657. And so in order to close that to 652 or a little in front of it, I had to finish at 647. So that's what I started to do from mile 13 to mile 12 to mile 20, right? And I had closed it down for my overall pace down to a 653, and then it just got away from me and I started to slow down, started to hit the wall because I had not trained enough, which I have now. But knowing what that felt like mentally as a runner personally, I don't like being that far behind, trying to chase it down just to get in front. Right? What I'd rather do is slim those margins, be only a few seconds behind, if at all, so that by the halfway point, I can get in front of it relatively quick and then hold it for a while and then make a run. Because I feel more motivated as a runner with the pace group right behind me, not letting them catch me. And as long as I'm carb loaded and I'm hydrated, I will be, I put in the training and the mileage to hold that pace this time through, and should finish with the sub 3. This is the end of your cinematic voyage. Where are the jokes though?